afternoon, members of the public and board members. So today I will open up our meeting because we do not have an assigned chair or vice chair yet. So I call to order the first Single Family Design Review Board full board hearing for 2023. Ms. Gu, can you please take the roll call?
Here we go. Remotely, Vice Chair Kalas.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian.
Here.
Board Member Klein.
Here.
And our new board member, Ms. Graffiti.
Here.
And if it's graffiti, right?
Graffiti.
But that's okay.
Thank you.
I
Close.
think we'll get there.
Okay.
Yes, and just quickly welcome Katie Graffiti. She's our newest board member, joining us as a member of the public, and we're really grateful for you to be on our board.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to general business. So item A is the 2023 election of the new chair and vice chair for the year 2023. So we will open the floor to board nominations for the new chair of 2023, and board members can nominate another board member to be the chair.
I nominate Leslie Kalas for the chair position.
Okay, and we don't need a seconder for the nomination, but others can place other nominations if you wish. So are there any other nominations for the chair? Okay, so I'm hearing none. Just to
Well, I would
confirm.
second for Leslie.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sure.
I'm hearing no more nominations for the chair, so Ms. Gu, if you could take roll call, please.
Here we go. Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Arkelian.
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
And Board Member Graffiti.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Vice Chair Kalas.
I'll say yes.
Great.
Letting yourself in.
Thank you. You are the new chair. And just before we move on to vice chair, I'd like to note that we do need someone in the room to be chairing the meeting today. So although board member Kalas is the new chair, the vice chair will be in her place just for this meeting. Okay. So moving on to vice chair nominations.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Arkelian.
Thank you. Any other nominations for vice chair?
I would second that.
Okay. So hearing no further nominations for vice chair, Ms. Gu, can you please take the roll call?
Okay. Here we go. For Vice Chair position, Chair Kalas.
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Klein.
Yes.
Board Member Graffiti. Sorry.
Yes.
And Board Member Arkelian.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the next item of business is item B, the 2023 appointment of consent reviewers, review representatives, and subcommittees. So just speaking to the subcommittee component quickly, that's not applicable to the Single Family Design Review Board, so we can move past that item. And then we do ask for board members to volunteer to cover the consent review hearings. So these consent review hearings are scheduled every Monday at 11 o'clock. They are not televised or recorded. They typically last an hour, but that's an estimate. And historically, we've had board member Klein attend every meeting. So we'd like to reserve her attendance moving forward, if possible, for projects that require landscape review or are heavily involving landscape review. So we would ask board members who could volunteer on a quarterly basis. And if you are unable to volunteer at this moment, I totally understand. Take a look at your calendar and please just email me back with your availability. Thank you. So from this point forward, I believe I can hand it over to I would be handing it over to our new chair, Leslie Kawas, but I will hand it over to our new vice chair, Mr. Arkelian.
So, Mr. Arkelian, we can help guide you, but you're going to be chairing the rest of this meeting today. And again, staff is happy to support you in that. So, in general business, you can, if you open up item C, is opening up public comment for items not on the agenda. And we can follow your agenda right in front of you for the other items. And we also have them on the screen. So, again, we're here to support you and
Sure.
and help you get through this meeting. It'll be good practice, trial by error.
Trial by error, yeah, and yeah, thank you for your patience. So yeah, I would like to open the floor up for public comment, either by Zoom or in person, if anyone has any comments.
For those attending on Zoom and you wish to make general oral public comment, you can do so at this time by clicking on the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. For those in the audience, if you wish to make general public comment, now is the time. Not seeing any in the audience. Ms. Gu, do we have any raised hands on Zoom?
We do not have any raised hands at this time. Thank you.
Okay, we can close general public comment and back to you, Chair Arkelian.
Moving on to approval of the minutes for Single Family Design Board, December 19th.
Here are the meeting minutes from the December 19th hearing. Item 1. Leslie?
I have two comments. They're not related to item 1, however, so I'll hold my comments.
Okay, thank you. So item 1, 105 Mesa Lane was continued indefinitely to the Planning Commission for return to consent with the following comments. Item 2, 1322 Dover Road received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent. Item 3, 1336 Shoreline Drive received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments.
I believe item C is not reflective of the motion that was made, and I would like to request that staff review the video and correct item 3C in the minutes.
Okay.
There's a couple different things being discussed there, and it looks like they've gotten a little bit confused in that item.
Yes. Thank you for the comment, and we will review that.
Thank you.
Item 4, 1364 Shoreline Drive received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent for final with comments.
And I have one correction on that.
Okay.
In item 3 of the motion, as I recall, that was the original verbiage, but that was corrected. I believe there was a directive there that if it were to be veneer, it shall be Santa Barbara sandstone rather than recommended. If staff could please review the wording on that.
Noted. We will. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, we will bring these meeting minutes back to the board at the next full board hearing for another round of review.
So moving on for the approval of the consent calendar, so consent minutes dated January 9th.
Yes. Item A, 1409 Portezuelo Avenue. Received project design approval and final approval with conditions and the required findings. Item B, 329 East Calle Lorales. Received project design approval and final approval with conditions and findings. That concludes the meeting minutes.
If any board members have any comments, if not, if anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Take roll call.
Okay, here we go. Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Arkelian,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
and I believe Board Member Gafidi abstains.
You can abstain.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay, so moving on to the consent minutes for Single Family Design Board dated January 17th.
Yes. Item A, 1260 Farello Road. Just a note to Board Member Klein, we amended the language in number 2 here. It's actually the Community Development Director who's the decision maker in keeping with the municipal code.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Accept.
thank you. Item B, 3501 Sea Ledge Lane. Received project design approval and final approval with findings. Item C, 1177 Harbor Hills Drive. Received project design approval and final approval with comments and findings. Item D, 710 Surfview Drive. Received project design approval and was continued indefinitely 1 week to consent review with comments. That concludes the meeting minutes.
Do any of the board members have any comments? If not, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Anyone to second?
I can second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call.
Here we go. Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Arkelian,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
and I believe Board Member Gafidi abstains.
Abstain, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to item F, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals. Any announcements from staff?
Yes, thank you, Chair, board members. This is in regards to appeals. We've received 2 appeals for on design review decisions, and we have 2 separate appeal hearings upcoming. The first would be an appeal filed for the project located at 2315 Edgewater Way, appealing the 12-5 SFDB project design approval decision to City Council. So that hearing is February 7th. And so we do ask that one of our board members please attend in representing the comments made and the motion that was supported for the approval. So it looks like Chair Arkelian, you had stepped down from this item, so we would ask that Kalas, Klein, or Anderson please consider attending. And then the next appeal is the project located at 229 Vista Del Mar, appealing the 1130 SFDB project design approval and final approval decision to City Council. So that hearing will be March 7th. And it looks like, yeah, again, we just asked for a representative who was supportive of the motion, and but those who oppose the motion are also welcome to attend and make that side known. And it looks like Klein or Arkelian were in support of that motion.
If I could just add one other thing about appeals, when they do go to City Council, really you're there representing the motion, or again, if you happen to be on the other side and we're not supportive of the motion, the information, it just allows City Council to address you as a single-family design board member, and you answer questions, and generally you're responding to the motion, and there might be references about the project and specific types of questions. So it should all be within the realm of your purview, and to kind of understand how did you get to your decision making, and oftentimes they may not ask you any questions at all, but it's just extremely helpful to have a design board representative there. So again, with the one, it seemed like it was unanimous vote with exception to Arkelian having to abstain, but the other, we do realize it was a split vote, so it would be certainly viable for both sides to show up and represent at City Council. And again, we don't have to determine this today, but we would like a commitment there. It is helpful to have. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can we be reminded of the time for the Edgewater appeal or the date, please?
Yes, board member or Chair Kloss. The date for the Edgewater project is February 7th. It's a Tuesday. There's a site visit with City Council the day prior on Monday.
And
Thank you.
board members would not be obligated to go on a site visit. It's simply just attending the city council meeting, and city council meetings start at 2:00 on Tuesdays, and then, but of course there are usually consent items and some small items. Usually it would be the first thing scheduled, presumably, but it's hard to give an exact time, just as it is for our board.
And to staff, what's the day for the Vista Del Mar?
Yes. Vista Del Mar is on March 7th. Again, similar process as Ms. Kokinda just described, Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements from the board?
Yes, I have to step down for item 3. I'm part of the applicant team. So you'll have to read the sole proprietor.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? No? And then item G, subcommittee reports. Don't believe we have any. No? So we'll skip over to item 1. Or
So, Vice Chair Arkelian, so your obligation for facilitating the meeting today is simply reading the project description, reading the address and the project description. We have it on the screen. You also have it in your agenda. And we would call the applicants up and to please join us. And yeah, when we can get started after you read the project description.
So, item 1, 3208 Laurel Canyon Road. It's a continued item requesting project design approval. Proposal for additions to an existing one-story, 1,288 square foot single unit residence comprised of 214 square feet first floor addition and a new 784 square foot second floor addition. The project also includes an interior remodel, a new 200 square foot carport, a 345 square foot covered patio, a 106 square foot second story deck, removal of the existing concrete driveway and replacement with a permeable paver system and an associated mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades. The proposed total of 2,727 square feet on a 6,970 square foot lot is approximately 93% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested, and project was last reviewed on October 10th. So, would like to ask the applicant here to introduce themselves and, oh, right, and to good, or we can start going over the meeting minutes from October 10th. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't matter. Okay, here we go. Sebastian, I think it's working now.
Apologies, we were having some issues pulling up the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Okay. Here they are. Number 1, provide additional neighborhood context and photos of the immediate neighborhood. 2, consider using more traditional architectural details. 3, restudy the proposed two-story elements to be more connected and consistent or consider a different location. 4, provide a color and materials board. 5, provide 3D renderings at minimum from street view at the corner of the parcel and another of the corner at the rear of the property. 6, provide a landscape plan. 7, the board agreed to waive the requirement for the applicant to provide the supplemental floor to lot area ratio FAR materials.
Okay, thank you. So if you can introduce yourself and state how you addressed specifically the motion findings. Thanks.
Joe Stewart with Studio 4 Design Group. As you described, we ended up with a little bit more square footage, and you will see why. So let me just go back to the old plans. So on the second floor, we had these two separate masses. And so you had asked us to kind of get those to go back from the street, relocate them, and just connect them visually. So what we did is we pushed it back, as you can see here. So now it's just one mass. There are a couple of masses still if you look when we look at the elevations. But then we tied them together with this staircase element because we had an exterior staircase that went to that separate unit that was, or not separate unit, but that separate mass at the front. And we brought that into the interior of the building. So that is what added that square footage, which brought up our square footage. So if you look then at the photographs, this is for the neighborhood context. We had these before, and then I added several photographs of going up and down the street of each of the houses in the neighborhood. So we can look at all those, and you can see that there are, down here, there's a two-story, there's two-story here. And I think that's it. But it's a pretty good mix of single-story and two-story. Where's the third one? These are.
Scroll down, high. Oh, up, bottom left corner.
This one?
Scroll down.
And if you want, you can go ahead and sit
Yeah,
down,
you can sit down.
just because it's easier to speak
is
into your
John-
microphone
John
because we
Goodman.
have Chair Kalas attending remotely, so she can't hear unless we're speaking in the mics.
Down one more.
So press that.
If you can scroll there. it
Oh,
is.
right here, yeah. That's true, I didn't see that.
3192.
So you can see there's a mix in the neighborhood. So there's more neighborhood context, so that's how we address that. The traditional details, this is also part of the materials sheet, as you can see that the windows and doors are going to be pretty traditional. And since we're on it, we will just look at the materials sheet that you asked for. This is the siding, which is a cementitious board and batten. And you can see the colors of the accents and the windows and the roof, which is a standing seam metal roof. As I mentioned before, addressing number 3, we moved the massing to the rear away from the street and connected it to the other mass that we had previously had up here. So that is tied together. You also asked for some 3D renderings, and John's father, Jerry, was nice enough to draw some beautiful pictures for us. And those are them. A rendering from the rear corner of the lot and from the street, those two renderings. I would like to ask, if we could, if you look at the front yard of their house, you can see it's pretty well landscaped. And they would, since we're not really touching anything out here other than what's going to be touched through construction, we'd like to keep that without getting a landscape plan and having the cost of having a landscape architect draw up those plans. And then if you look at the rear, right here, you can see we're taking out all of this concrete. And this spot right here is where the first story addition is going to come out. And we'd like to just kind of carry that lawn area out to here. It's not a huge backyard, and they've got 2 kids, which they just had their second. And then as far as the FAR increase, I think I explained how we got there, and that was in connecting those 2 masses. So that's all I've got, unless you've got something you'd like to add.
Okay.
So in the elevations, this is how it resolves itself. There's not really much change to this elevation except for the little pop out on the lower left as we look at the east elevation. And then the west elevation, you can see the tower element that is the staircase that ties those 2 masses together. Similar detailing to what we had before, except we had that second addition up here, so we've pushed it back significantly. This is the front. You can see before we had a deck on the front over the garage, which was part of that addition. This has stayed pretty much the same, and then of course there's the tower element that ties it all together. And then this is looking from the rear of the building, and you can see those same components. And there's how the roof plan would work out. Okay.
All right, thank you. Would like to open up the room into Zoom for public comment. If anyone in the room has would like to submit a speaker slip for this item, they can do so now. Do we have any
Thank you.
Zoom?
Ms. Gu, can you please switch over to my screen? So for those attending on Zoom, now is your time to make oral public comment on this item, and you can do so by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for those on Zoom, I just want to acknowledge board members. We did receive 1 written correspondence on this item, a letter that was distributed to the board prior to this hearing from Anita Williamson. So recognizing that comment. And for those attending in person who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time. I'm seeing none in person. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
At this time, I do not see any raised hands at all. Thank you.
Okay. With this, we will close public comment and back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So would like to open it up to the board for questions. Board member Anderson, you have any questions?
I do. Can you go over your plate heights with us?
Yes. So that's if I can read them. Anyway, we do have a lower second floor plate height, which was used because we wanted to sink this down. I think it's 7.6. I can't read that.
To the applicant, you can zoom in as much as you want. Yeah, absolutely, if you need to read it.
I could be a little challenged sometimes.
We kind of throw
Yeah, so
people
it's
into
7.6.
this.
So 10 is the second floor, 10 feet. Above this portion, it's 9 feet over on the other portion of the addition to the west. If we're looking at this section here, you can see the change there. And that's really to get a little more volume into this space that's the covered patio underneath. So anyway, we're looking at 10, and then we've got 7.6 plate height on the second floor, so we can bring this down. We can't really bring it down too much more than that because we're in the bath there. But we brought it down as much as we could.
And do you know the top of that tower or the plate height of the stair tower?
I do have that in the elevations. Bear with me.
I believe it's 25.4.
It's 25.4 to the top at the plate.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So what I did with that, let's zoom in a little bit, is I brought this eave line, the top of the eave line, to be kind of flush with the peak of this adjacent structure there. And it leaves us just a little 2 feet above this ridge line. Otherwise, I think it's going to look too squashed. I don't have the plate height, but if that's 25.4, it's probably 23.8 or so, something like that, based on the low pitch.
So you added square footage as well, do you, from your previous submittal? And did you go over, or do we have that in the stats here of what
Yes.
that? Okay, addition is? Okay.
Yeah, and that's really just that space where we're tying it in, so it's the staircase, because we put that in the interior, and just being able to connect those two masses and be able to circulate through that space. So that's really the only added square footage.
So maybe we're 95% FAR now, something like that.
I think 93 is that right? Yeah.
And you did not bring a site section or street silhouettes so we could see how it ties in with the neighborhood?
Just that site section that I showed you, which is this one. So as it relates to the adjacent structures. So this being the lower, this whole neighborhood terraces down.
Right.
And so the comment came from the owner of this house over here. And
Right.
if you want me to show you what part of her view that's blocking, we do have a document here. I didn't give it to anybody before.
That was my next question. So yeah, if you did talk to that adjacent neighbor, it looks, both those adjacent residences are probably 8-foot plates, and this is going to be a big change, but understood there's other 2 stories on the street, and I understand the need for more square footage, but
And we did, like I said, take it down to 7.6. But so the yellowed out windows on
To the
that.
applicant, if you can just set it on the table so we can get it on the screen for those attending on Zoom.
It's going to have to go directly
More toward
underneath the camera.
the left.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
You couldn't find it.
Yep, you can see it.
In City TV, we'll zoom in as much as possible.
So the blue dot there, that is the house we are proposing the project for. And the red is the residence where the comment came from. And those windows A and B are the portion of the view that would be blocked by the addition. Whereas the main back of the house obviously is not obstructed.
that's it for my questions.
Thank you. Board Member Graffiti, do you have any questions if you've reviewed them?
I do.
And part of my interruption to Vice Chair Arkelian, Board Member Graffiti, can you just verify, did you review the previous minutes and recording for this particular project?
Yes.
If I just wanted to have that on the record, so just to make sure that you're able to participate. So thank you for adding that.
Yep. I'd like to understand more if you engaged at all with that neighbor, I think on the east side, where you just pointed out the yellow windows, and if so, make any adjustments or a plan. I think I was going to ask about landscaping, privacy hedging, but it looks like there's actually already hedging that exists. Okay.
Do you want to address any conversations?
Yeah, first time that my wife and I have done this, even though my father's an architect, but we didn't know when Joe was going to put the yellow sign down. And we thought we'd still have another 2, 3, 4 weeks to reach out to our direct neighbors, and then send an email to the street kind of at large. The sign went in, she was very quickly concerned, which she has every right to be. I would be too in her position. And consequently, we shared with her the design that we were at the time, with the caveat that it was still in process. And obviously, you can see from the plans he showed you prior, changes were made not just directly because of the response in the prior meeting, but certainly that was a big factor. And so we didn't have renderings yet. We didn't have, a lot of the materials even picked out. So we were trying to still wait for getting that all kind of together as a package that we could show our neighbors. And subsequently, she expressed her concern. She came over to our house, went through what we had at that time. We went over to hers. She showed us the windows. The biggest takeaway from my perspective was effectively any second story is going to block some section of her view, any second story anywhere on our property. And we'd initially looked at doing this just single story, but it gets rid of effectively most of the yard, and I think probably doesn't meet the FAR, even if we were to. So independent of that, we then told her that we were going to talk to our architect and look at how we could shift things. One of the things we did do, which is going to end up being more expensive, but I think it makes for a better house, was to remove that second story above our garage, which was blocking a portion of her view, and sink that back. At least at this point, the parts of her view that are blocked have been masked together so that it's not as broad, I guess. And so, yeah, I mean, our goal was never to just kind of, we have a good relationship with her. Our goal was never to come in and disregard our neighbors entirely, et cetera. I just don't see how we can add footage without impacting her somehow. And, she's up on a higher elevation, so she has views, but then effectively that should mean that we can't build up or can't have views. I think that's where there's a disconnect between our positions on it. And, we have no intention of trying to make this difficult. We want it to be as beneficial to her while still fulfilling at least most of our goals. At least that's what we've been trying to do. And so hopefully, this most recent version checks those boxes. It certainly seems to make the most sense for the layout of the house.
Okay. And then my only other question, can you just confirm the purpose or the intended use of that tall peak element? You mentioned that's a stair wall connecting the two elements. Okay.
I'll let you.
And it ties the two masses together. So at some point we had, because that was one of the requests, was trying to get the two masses to meld to one. And so in order to do that and create some space, something had to happen there. And so we just decided to make that a tower and just keep it as low as we could.
Okay. That's all.
And then quickly, I'm not sure if it has any relevance, but since I don't have experience here, and I have, I think, 8. I don't know if I can submit this. This is a diagram of the...
Do you mind putting that under the table there
Right. And
for City TV?
Yeah, and you can also pass it down.
This is also showing that they did engage with all of the neighbors. So all of the green ones they supported, via email or letter or whatever, not
Or in
officially through
person.
you guys, right, or in person, or neutral, and the one adjacent neighbor. So they did.
Right.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Klein, do you have any questions?
Yes. Can you go to the site plan? Have you looked at any stormwater management? Have you guys decided on what you're going to do there?
We're tier 1, so it's really just going to be essentially taking the
Downspouts.
roof drains onto landscaped areas.
Great. And then can you confirm no trees are being removed?
Yeah, no trees are being removed.
And then you said the west side is supportive, that neighbor. Are you adding any landscaping on that side, or is there existing landscape on their property? Can you talk to that condition?
Yeah. Joe, we haven't really discussed this, so I'll answer. If you can go to the rendering. There is a fence currently with a vine on it that needs to come down because it's rotted through. And then there were some other structural elements that a prior owner had built probably 30 or 40 years ago without getting permits. And so all of that's going to come out, and we're going to replace it with fencing that are, this is down the road. We're going to see if we can, what we can afford. But the goal is to replace it with another fence at, the standard height, and then not remove the citrus that you can't see in this rendering, but there are a couple of citrus trees there. And then the other thing that we have made sure to promise our neighbor to the west is we are going to plant some fairly mature trees so that if anyone is on that balcony that is furthest to the west, or deck that's furthest to the west, that we can't actually see directly into their yard.
Great.
That's this deck here.
Perfect. That
Let me show you
answers
just
that.
a picture. I think I have a picture of that. Let's see if I can zoom in. You can't really see. It's this area here. So you can see how it's already treed up a little bit, planted. But he's talking about further between.
Well, this is in the back, actually, that we're discussing.
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, if you can zoom in on my phone, I certainly have a photo to give you context, but,
If you want to go to the site plan really quick.
Oh, yeah, we don't really have a good picture of that one. A site plan?
Yeah. Don't kind of see where that neighbor is.
That's this neighbor.
Got it. Okay.
And so that structure he's talking about, is right here. And that's going to go away. So that's going away, and then he's talking about this area here.
Got it. And then do you have existing trees called out on the plan at all? Like the citrus or any of that?
I don't.
And then, quick question, do you have lighting proposed? Any landscape lighting? Maybe go through the materials of your lighting proposed?
Yeah. So, this product's, we're not settled on this one. But it'll be something along these lines. And so this one is saying that they're dark sky rated as long as you use the correct lens. But we're still not sold on this, and even if we can't get something that looks like this that we're all happy with, they're going to have something custom made from Santa Barbara Lighting.
Okay. And then any landscape lighting?
Not any proposed now, no.
And then lastly, the roof material, what was that again?
That's standing seam metal roof, so that's this flat pan. And then this is the color here, which is the dark bronze.
And is that in the neighborhood anywhere else?
There's one house at the top of the street. I can,
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that there was neighborhood context. And
3231 has it.
those are all my questions.
Thank you. Chair Kalas, do you have any questions?
I do. I think moving the two additions that are on the second floor together is great. I'm happy to see that. I'm a little bit confused, and so I guess I'm just going to ask the question as to what the style is that you're envisioning for the home. And the reason I'm asking that question is because the manner in which the hard-lined drawings are representing the finishes feels very what we're all accustomed to seeing as being sort of modern farmhouse. The detailing looks somewhat light in the hard-lined elevations. But then the renderings that are beautiful that you've so kindly provided us, though that feels much heavier, much more rustic, much more sort of almost green and green-like, much more, I would imagine this to be a heavy color palette with heavy detailing. And the colors that you're showing on your color board tend to be a little bit darker too. So I'm just trying to understand, because we don't have any exterior details provided in this packet along with the drawings, sort of what the vision is for this.
It will be tending more towards the craftsman feel. There's going to be probably some exposed timber heads at the windows and doors. It's just, I'd like to get a project before I get too deep into the details. So that's why there's not really a detail sheet at this point.
Okay. So you would imagine, for example, on sheet A36, the renderings where you have the outriggers and the rafter tails, you're assuming some larger members for that?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So like on the west elevation, sheet A33, you have some awning supports, and they look shaped, and they look a little bit just lighter, I guess would be the word I would use. I guess I would just encourage you to move the exterior elevations in a direction that reflects the real design intent a little bit more closely.
Okay.
That was one question that I had.
Could I just address that?
And then another question that I have is, it looks like you have a mix of gables and hips. Can you talk to us about what drove that decision?
Well, I didn't do the initial design, so I'm not sure exactly how to respond to that. But it's not uncommon to have a mix of those roof elements. This is an existing hip roof. And essentially this tower has the same feel, and then we've got the gables elsewhere. I don't know how to answer that. There's nothing that drove it other than aesthetics.
Did you consider hipped roofs for the second story elements?
It doesn't give us the volume on the interiors that we are looking for.
Okay. And then I guess I'm just trying to understand what the rationale for the cupola is, and the height of it. I know that's over the stairwell. Perhaps you could speak to that.
Yes, we started off with it being a little bit higher, and then I wanted to tuck it down because I knew this was going to be a comment. In doing so, I just had to find a place to line it up to where it made sense in three-dimensional space, not just two-dimensional. And this felt like this came down low enough, but still you'd be able to see it from the street and have it read as a separate element. As you can see in the rendering, it's more how you would see it, obviously, in 3D from the street. And actually, that drawing is of the tower a bit high, one of the higher iterations. to tuck in a window there.
Okay.
I,
Did you consider at all moving the bedroom up to the gable line of the house, or is that the room below that you were trying to retain?
I didn't follow that one.
On sheet A22, your second floor plan, where you have what I'm assuming is the master bedroom suite to the south.
Okay. Say that again.
I'm wondering if you considered moving that mass north on the page so that the northerly wall would not encounter a slope towards it and the need for a cant strip,
Yes.
so that basically it would align with the ridge line of the first floor.
Right. And we talked about that in the first meeting. So hang on, let me get to,
But that's that special room, right?
yeah, that's this.
Okay.
So they want to keep the character of this space. And if we did that, this would be a flat ceiling across here.
You'd
And we'd
lose
probably just
that.
have to do a flat all the way across. Otherwise, it would just be a weird soffit right there.
Okay.
So that's, we were trying to keep the character of this space. It's a very nice space.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you, and I have one question. So the required FAR rose to 93%. Have you performed like any FARs of neighboring properties just to, for us to?
I have not.
Okay, that sounds good. So if there's no other questions, we'll be moving to comments. Board Member Anderson, any comments?
Yes, comments. Thank you. I think that, I mean, it's a significant improvement from your last submittal on all fronts. Design, distinctive architectural style. The step back is huge with the neighborhood, you know, in your second floor. The quality materials look, you know, right. I just feel, though, with your over 85% FAR and your project design approval, there's some missing pieces for me that are challenging me for conclusive approval today. Struggling a bit with the tower and the massing. Mostly just neighborhood context. So if there were street silhouettes or some additional FARs of, you know, just what you did here. But I think mostly street silhouettes to see how your house fits in with everybody along the way. And yes, I did drive up there, and there are a number of 2 stories. So, but, you know, you are asking for more, so we will ask you for more to justify your increased FAR. There's no, to me, I need to see some exterior details, you know, all the detailing, because that's what you're in for. What else? And I don't know, Katie, on landscape plans, but preliminary something to understand what you're doing with landscape. Colored rendering of some sort would be nice, but I think that those are all in the right direction. So that's not super important to me. It's mostly just the neighborhood compatibility because you're asking for so much more. And then I think we're good to go, at least in my opinion. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Graffiti, do you have any comments?
Yes, I agree. I think it's a significant improvement from the last meeting, and I also spent time on foot and in the neighborhood. While there isn't necessarily a very similar design, I think there's enough similarity in the palette used and the roof material and just the general variance of homes in the neighborhood to justify the design. And I don't need to see a colored material or sample of the exterior. I don't have any issues with the increase in FAR, just given the way the second story is set back and just the similarity with the other second stories in the neighborhood. It doesn't seem to strike me as an overwhelmingly large home. The last one, though, is I am struggling a little bit with the, I think, Board Member Kloss mentioned a cupola or just the tall peak element, just the general height of it. I understand, though, in the way that the style of the roof, why the height is how it is. I just would maybe want to see if you could restudy that. Otherwise, that's it for me.
Thank you. Board Member Klein, any comments?
Mr. Vice Chair, through you, this is, unfortunately, this is the time for the board members to deliberate and comment, so I would honor that. And then if you want to, Mr. Vice Chair here can allow you to speak after if he so chooses.
Thank you. Board Member Klein?
Yes, I do think that the project is compatible with the neighborhood from what you supplied already with the second story being in the neighborhood. I think that the materials are all high quality and it's an improvement from the last round. I would request to give you final that you have details of any fencing and then also existing trees shown on the plan and any new trees and the sizes of those. I do think that the western side would benefit from some new trees and new trees in general on the property to help with the massing and the height.
Thank you. Chair Kloss, any comments?
Yeah, I generally agree with those that have come before. I would feel more comfortable giving this project PDA if we did have some exterior details. So I think I'm in agreement with Ms. Anderson, just so that we, again, can clarify and understand what the real architectural intent is here. I think that's important. One, I'm struggling with the cupola or the taller tower element. I think if it's a highly desired element on the owner's part, I think it could still come down and be successful. I think it could still be dropped maybe 18 inches, 2 feet. Another alternative might be to consider a hipped condition where the master bedroom upstairs and that second wing are meeting one another, and maybe bringing the roof line out over the balcony for the deck for the one bedroom, so that maybe you just have more of a consistent roof line rather than this pop-up. It might also, it might help to make the project feel a little bit less massive. I'm a little bit on the fence with that, though. There's something kind of interesting about the eclecticism of the eclectic nature of the tower that might really make it. But it's got to be carefully detailed, and I do think it needs to be brought down a little bit more than it already has been. Those are my comments.
Thank you. And my comments are, first of all, thank you very much for providing a color and material board, and as well as the rendering. It just helps me paint a really good picture on how this project has progressed and what it's visually going to look like. I believe it's a major improvement from the last meeting in terms of how the second story element is mostly towards the back instead of one in the front, one in the back. It feels more consistent, so I appreciate the thoughtfulness you've put into that. I am understanding that you're doing the best to preserve that living room, as you've been mentioning over the meetings. In terms of the FAR, despite having the second story mostly in the back, away from street view, I would just, since this is in a required FAR area as indicated on the plans, I would ask if there can be, for you to consider minimizing to the best of your ability, preferably under 90%, but maybe for me to, before I even make those kinds of statements, I believe a FAR study of neighboring houses, that would kind of help me paint a better picture. I know from the last meeting, we ended up not electing to do story polls, and you're asking for more, but I do want to try to work and try to better understand how. Want to make sure that this increase in FAR is actually a good fit for this neighboring area. So seeing FARs of surrounding homes, seeing how this fits in will give me give me like the confidence to move forward with this or to go from there. And I'm in support of the other members. Minimizing the tower element would be appreciated. I know Chair Kalas mentioned 1.5 to 2 feet, somewhere around there, to the best you can. And I'm in support of the other board members for providing some more exterior details. I do like the drawn rendering. I do appreciate that, but little more details would be helpful for giving approval. Before we go to a motion, do any of the board members have additional comments they'd like to add?
I have one more comment.
Okay.
If the intent is to really take this in the direction of more of a craftsman or a green and green, I would reconsider the siding color that you're proposing. It seems awfully light if that is the direction that's intended. If it's more of a sort of rustic farmhouse that you're shooting for, then I think what you have is probably appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Chair Kalas. Seeing that we have no other comments, would like to see if anyone would like to entertain a motion.
I was supposed to be prepared for this. I'm going to stumble through entertaining a motion that you would bring back your project to the board for us to see it one more time. And that would include additional FAR studies so that we can, because you're over the 85% and you're asking for project design approval, we need to see that it fits in with the neighborhood compatibility wise. And then, the tower, the massing and everything can be justified and it may be fine. I think that you need to consider minimizing the tower. It has been brought up, and or bringing that under the roof line of, that existing second story. I believe we're requesting that you bring in some planting landscape plans with your fence. And we are also asking for additional exterior details and to sort of fine tune the craftsman versus the modern farmhouse distinctive architectural style. Anybody want to add on to my motion?
I'll second with the revision to just have a tree plan that shows existing trees and new trees shown with sizes.
And Mr. Vice Chair, just through you to the rest of the board, this is probably more of a question to the applicant and what they're capable of doing. We have availability on our January 30th calendar, but that doesn't give you much time by the deadline to submit. So I'm trying to think when our...
Next available date is 2/13.
And then we could...
What's the timeline for submit?
We would need to have all of your materials the Wednesday before the hearing. So if I'm trying to look over across the way at the calendar. So for the 30, it would be January 25th is when we would need to have this. So it doesn't give you much time, but we can. Another alternative would be to just to have the motion maker add the date of January 30th, and if you can make it, great. If not, we can just postpone it to the next hearing. So, if that's okay with the motion maker and the applicant, or if that works for the applicant. So, to the motion maker, it would just be to continue to a date certain of January 30th.
So adding to the motion that you would bring back to the board January 30th.
I'll second.
And I would like to ask the maker of the motion in terms of the providing an FAR study to provide to clarify for the applicant to bring an FAR study of the immediately neighboring homes.
It's typically 20, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, through you to the rest of the board and to the applicant, it's generally the 20 closest lots. That's the general standard. And whether, if you'd like to comment on whether you think that's appropriate or if you need fewer, could be helpful for the applicant.
Could ask the maker of the motion or the board if they believe 20 closest homes is appropriate or a smaller number.
I would be in favor of a smaller number.
I'm fine with that. 10, but I mean, you want to find the ones in your neighborhood. I mean, this looks like 20, so, and I would think you would want to find the 2 stories.
And I would be in support of 10 neighboring homes, yeah.
I'd like to see at least 3 flanking on either side of the residence and then the associated ones across the street. So at least 3 on either side, and then I guess that would be 7 across the street.
You're trying to justify your greater than 85% FAR.
As maker of the motion or the second.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. So we'll take. If there's no other comments, we'll take a roll call vote.
Can we hear the motion read back?
Okay.
Vice Chair Arakilian, please.
Okay. Do you want me to do it? Okay.
Sure. I would like the applicant, if you have something to say right now.
Oh, sorry.
Clarify what you were talking about the landscape, because I heard landscape plan and then I heard existing new trees.
She'll cover it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Continue to date certain of January 30th, 2023 to full board with comments. Provide additional FAR studies to justify the proposed tower element. Provide either immediate 20 closest lots or 3 lots to either side of the proposed project and 7 from across the street. Provide justification for the vaulted roof line of the existing second story. Is that correct?
Ms.
And-
Gu, for number 1, if we could
Okay.
just go back briefly.
Okay.
In regards to the FAR study of the immediate neighborhood, I believe it was the 3 flanking properties located on either side of the subject residence and the 7 located across the street from the existing residence. For number 2, I would suggest restudy and consider minimizing the tower element or bringing under the roof line of the second story.
And then the last one would be provide a landscape plan, including fencing with existing and proposed tree plan.
For number 3, Ms. Gu, I would suggest provide a tree plan with identifying sizes of existing and proposed trees. Comment 4, provide additional exterior details to define the architectural style. Thank you.
Yeah, and along with the FAR, the street silhouettes are super helpful. I don't know if you know what you show your new improvement with the homes, the adjacent homes.
Okay. Okay, here we go with a verbal vote. Chair Kalas.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Arkelian.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Board Member Klein,
Yes.
and Board Member Gafidi.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other side of the street goes into a ravine.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We're going to have to move to the next item, fortunately. Now we're going to move on to item 2 of the motion. So moving on, item number 2 of the motion, 101 Santa Cruz Boulevard, the proposal to demolish the existing 1,095 square foot, one-story residence and 237 square foot garage, and construct a new 1,963 square foot, two-story single-unit residence with a 406 square foot attached garage located at the corner of Santa Cruz Boulevard and Shoreline Drive, and located in the non-appealable jurisdictions of the coastal zone. Project includes a new sidewalk along Shoreline Drive, removal of an existing pepper tree and palm tree, and landscape improvements. On December 14, 2022, the staff hearing officer granted approval for a front setback modification to allow the residence and garage to encroach in the required 20-foot setback on Santa Cruz Boulevard, and an open yard modification to allow less than the minimum dimensions in the open yard. The proposed total of 2,369 square feet on a 5,863 square foot lot is 89% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested, and project was last reviewed on September 12th, 2022. If we can bring up the meeting minutes of that.
Yes. Comment 1. The board generally finds the proposed project to be aesthetically appropriate in terms of mass, bulk, and scale, and an improvement to the neighborhood. 2. Study reducing the square footage of the second floor balcony. 3. The board generally finds the proposed privacy screen planting sufficient along the property lines. 4. The board finds posted story poles will not be necessary to request of the applicant for the proposed project.
Thank you. And before we pass it over to the applicant, would like to ask staff if they have any comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So just noting, as the project description relayed, that this project received approval from the staff hearing officer for the front setback modification and the open yard modification. The applicants can speak to any changes since the last time of review, and it looks like this project is a Tier 3 in regards to stormwater.
Thank you. So I'm going to pass it over to you for 15 minutes. If you'd like to introduce yourselves and how you've addressed the motion. Thank you.
Is this on? Yeah. Thank you, board members. My name is Liz Hughes, presenting for Tom Oxner, our architect. And we also have Chuck McClory here as the landscape architect for this project. What the changes to the set that we brought in today were to address requirements for final approval. We included an updated material board with lighting, both recessed lighting and sconce lighting for the exterior, as well as lighting plans, including exterior lighting for the landscape plans, which Chuck can go after I've gone through the comments, and as well as recessed and the sconce lighting on the architectural plans. So I'll kind of zoom forward here. Our site plan has not changed since the previous submittal. As they mentioned, we did get approval for the modifications to reduce the dimension of the required open yard, as well as encroaching into the front setback along Santa Cruz Boulevard. We're at an 89% FAR, which is the same as the previous submittal. I'll zoom in a little bit on the lighting plans to show where the proposed sconce lighting is. Mostly just required lighting at the exterior doors. So we have a sliding door coming out to the side yard here, where we have a sconce light at the garage, as well as 2 sliding doors on the first floor and the entry. And then on the second floor, we only have 1 exterior door where we have some recessed lighting here at that covered deck. And I'll also address, we looked at the square footage of this deck here. In the previous reviews, what we did was we provided a solid wall along this, the side yard so that to provide privacy for the occupants of the neighboring parcel. This property does have 2 front yard setbacks, so it's looking out over shoreline, both Shoreline and Santa Cruz. So the square footage of this deck is only about 85 square feet, and we thought that that was appropriate for a project of this size. And you know, this is kind of where you get a peek of the ocean. So we wanted to try and maintain that as much as possible, and we are set back quite a ways from the first floor there, so it's not an overly large deck. Let's see. Other drawings that we provided, building sections, if you wanted to come back to any of those, and then the exterior elevations, which are essentially the same as what we had in the previous review. Just to recap the changes from the previous, we were trying to reduce the amount of openings on the second story along that side yard to maintain privacy for the neighboring parcel. We also reduced the plate height on the upper level to 8 feet, so to try and bring that massing down as much as possible. Door and window schedules, exterior details, if we need to come back to any of that. So I'll go back to Chuck's drawings and
You
he
wanted to
can,
scroll through them?
yeah.
There's really no change to the landscape. I just went on to do irrigation, lighting, and I have a fence detail that's nice. It looks the same on both sides. So there's a detail for that. So that's the lighting, and not very many lights.
Yeah, so some minimal landscape lighting along the front yard here and a little bit at the side where we have a gate coming to the side yard just for accessibility there.
And there's a civil engineer for all the stormwater stuff. And unless you have any questions, it's virtually the same as last time, except more plans, specs.
And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Would like to open it up to the floor for public comment. If anyone has a speaker slip to submit, and would like to ask staff if there's anyone waiting on Zoom.
Thank you. Ms. Gu, can you please switch over to my screen? For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time by selecting the raise your hand icon. And when called upon, you can unmute yourself. So while we're waiting for those on Zoom, we did not receive any written correspondence on this item. And for those attending in the audience, if you wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so now. Not seeing any. Ms. Gu, do you see any raised hands on Zoom?
No, at this time, I do not see any raised hands at all.
None? Okay. We will close public comment. Back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So I'd like to open up to the board now for questions. Board Member Anderson, any questions?
I don't have any questions, except for solar panels, terracotta color. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you. Board Member Graffiti, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Board Member Klein, any questions?
Just wanted to for staff. Sorry if I missed this. Can this get final today or?
The board member Klein, the project needs to be routed to creeks before it can go to final approval. So perhaps if the board feels like they can motion for project design approval, they could considering forwarding to the consent calendar for final.
Perfect. Perfect segue for my only question is, can you remind me the stormwater management that you're doing?
Yes, we have tier 3 here on this property, and Chuck might want to comment on this as well, because we coordinated with the civil engineer to integrate with the landscape. We have some areas of gravel that kind of tie in with the planter areas, as well as some permeable driveway pavers here to provide some percolation for the stormwater.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Chair Kalost, any questions?
I only have one question. I did review the video. I should note for the record that I did review the last meeting. On the west elevation,
Oops, did we lose her?
I think it's the west elevation. Yeah, the ground floor area. Is that, are those, I'm sorry, on the first floor mass there, is that like a scrolled plaster eave detail, or it looks different than the exposed rafter tails?
Yes.
To the right of where your
Here?
cursor is on, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we have two eave details, one with the exposed 4x6 rafter tail and one with a plaster eave. And I'll go to the details sheet here. This is one of our eave details. And then, actually, let's see. We have actually a larger one up at the higher entry. This is kind of similar to the other one, but this is just the awning here. But it does extend, I think it's a foot or a foot and a half past the wall surface, 18 inches. The
Okay,
typical.
You've already answered my question, actually, Ms. Hughes. I was going to ask whether it would make sense to just engage that awning with the roof overhang with the eave condition of the first floor there. But because they're two different details, it doesn't. So I can see why you've left those separated.
Oh, okay. This
Yeah.
element here. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
I do have, thank you. I have one question on sheet L1. So on the front yard, tree number 2, the Norfolk Island pine. I just want to confirm there's not going to be any modifications or
No,
to that
it's
tree.
existing to remain.
Existing to remain.
To protect.
Great. That's all I have, and we'll just move over to comments. Board Member Anderson, any comments?
I don't have any comments other than I believe it's ready to approve.
Thank you. Board Member Graffiti, any comments?
Vice Chair, Board Member Graffiti, just if you could state for the record if you've reviewed all past materials.
Yes, I've reviewed past materials, yeah. My only comments similar are appreciate the style and the unique design elements, and I find the overall size, bulk, and scale compatible with the neighborhood.
Thank you. Board Member Klein, any comments?
Just that I think it's ready for PDA and should go to consent for final.
Chair Kalas, thank you. And Chair Kalas, any comments, please?
No, I think it looks good. I think it's ready for PDA and or final. But if we need to hold on that and move it on to consent for final, I would be amenable to that as well.
Thank you. Just a moment here. So item 2 of the motion was to study reducing the square footage of the second floor balcony, seeing the proposed pine to remain, and how you've added a wing wall in respect to the neighbors, and reviewing our good neighbor guidelines in our pamphlet. Would be supportive of keeping that existing balcony square footage. And I also am in support of, believe it's ready for PDA and for consent to final. So with that said, is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I'll move that the project get project design approval and go to consent for final with the following findings. That the project is consistent with the scenic character of the neighborhood with aesthetics, materials, and detailing, is compatible in size, bulk, and scale, and has appropriately responded to the minutes and adjusting as needed. Quality architectural materials are being used as mentioned. No significant trees are being removed, and additional trees are being provided. The public health, safety, and welfare are protected. The good neighbor guidelines are being followed with landscaping and a wing wall at the balcony, and no public views are being impacted.
Thank you, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We're going to go to the roll call.
Okay, here we go. Chair Kalas?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chair Arkelian?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Klein?
Yes.
And Board Member Gafidi?
Yes.
Thank you, and there's a 10-day appeal period. Appreciate it. Would like to request a 5-minute recess before we move to the next item. Thanks. reopen the Single Family Design Board and would like to ask if Chair Colossus is with us. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the third item, and before we do, we would like to ask Board Member Klein to read the following statement. Or
Actually, I think Vice Chair Arakelian, you can read it, and yeah, sorry
it.
about that. I could've
Excuse me.
warned you.
So reading the statement here, the State Fair Political Practices Act Regulation 187.024B5 states that an official may appear before a design and or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering drawings which the official has prepared for a client. Board Member Klein is a sole practitioner and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of their client. So item 3, 1269 Farello Road, a proposal for substantial redevelopment of the existing non-conforming residence involving partial demolition for a new 3,699 square foot, 3-story residence conforming to the required setbacks with a 442 square foot garage. Project includes permitting the as-built conversion of floor area at the basement level to habitable and additional improvements including removal of the existing driveway and curb cut to be replaced with a new curb cut and access bridge at the new garage location, new photovoltaic array infrastructure, a pool, and hardscape and landscape improvements throughout. The proposed total of 3,348 square feet on a 12,197 square foot lot is 84% of the maximum required floor to lot area ratio, includes 50% floor area reduction for the partially below grade basement. The property is adjacent to a historic resource in the English vernacular style at 1277 Farello Road. Project design approval is requested, and the project was last reviewed on December 5th, 2022. If we can pull up those minutes.
And Mr. Vice Chair, through you to the rest of the board, I see that we have a large audience today. If you haven't already, we do have speaker slips over here at the front. Please fill them out, and you can just drop them off in this little comment box, and we'll have that for public comment. Thank you.
These are the previous meeting minutes here. Number 1, the board appreciates the applicant's efforts in terms of the neighborhood research and use of quality materials for the proposed project. Continue to study the massing of the house to make it less dominant within the neighborhood. It should read more like a 1-story structure as viewed from the street. 3, the board appreciates the desire for a modern architecture home. However, the applicant should take into consideration the prevalent design styles and massing in the neighborhood in their efforts to reduce the massing of the home and in providing appropriate landscaping. 4, explore a reduction in the massing of the garage in the front as it appears when viewed from the street, or possibly lowering the grade as to appear stepping down or going down to the garage. 5, study privacy issues for the flanking neighbors in regards to the proposed 3rd-story deck. And Vice Chair, I do have a few brief staff comments regarding this item. So the applicant is requesting project design approval as stated in the project description, and this item was continued from the December 5th hearing. The project currently meets all zoning code development standards and can receive the requested approval today at the board's discretion. And as a reminder, we previously discussed this at the last hearing. The project is considered substantial redevelopment, and the revised project description notes that the existing permitted unfinished basement will be permitted as-built and converted to habitable space now. And I also understand there's a reduction to square footage for the proposed residence and the proposed garage. And the applicant can review any other changes and adjustments they've made in regards to previous SFDB comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to pass it over to the applicant for 15 minutes. If you can introduce yourselves and how you have addressed the previous motion. Thank you.
Great. I'm Dan Weber. I'm the architect.
Janet McGinnis.
Can you just make sure your microphone is on? You just
I'm Janet McGinnis, attorney.
Katie Klein, landscape architect.
All right. So thanks for that introduction. We are going to try to make, we've tried to keep our responses specifically in response to the items in the motion. So I'll try to limit our presentation to the images that have illustrated our response. As was mentioned, we're 84% of the allowed FAR. We got positive feedback from this board at our last hearing, so we have not modified that number. So we're not gonna revisit that set of statistics. We're conforming to all ordinances. We're conforming to the height limit. We're conforming to all setbacks. We've brought multiple items of non-conformance into conformance. So, and we have thoroughly responded in a demonstrable way to the comments of the board. So we think we have done a very good job at responding, and we're going to ask you for a project design approval today. Okay. Comment number 1 from the motion: the board appreciates the applicant's efforts in terms of the neighborhood research and quality materials. Thank you for that. We don't have an exhibit to respond to that, but we're looking forward to enhancing the detailing and specifications and sharing that with you at our final review hearing. Item number 2, continue to study the massing of the house to make it less dominant within the neighborhood. It should read more like a one-story structure as viewed from the street. So we heard you loud and clear on this this item, and we heard that you were asking us to make a demonstrable change to the massing, particularly as it relates to the street. So that's what we've done. You see on the screen a set of elevations, the red shaded area representing the previously reviewed design that you saw at the last hearing. We have done a series of changes to address the height of the structure as it relates to the street. That involves plate height changes in both levels, floor elevation changes, but the net result being that the structure is reduced by 2'11" and change on the the western corner. And because we stepped the mass back slightly at the western side, that results in a 4'5" height change at the corner on the higher side. So we think that makes sense because as the street comes up, we step our mass going up the street as well. So you see the west elevation illustrating the approximate 3-foot reduction in height in the garage. You also see an eave added to the garage, which I'll discuss later. 3-foot height elevation on the other side. I'll flip through these quickly since that massing reduction is just reflected in all of the elevations and section drawings. This results in the mass stepping down as you approach the street to provide a more friendly pedestrian scale and, as you requested, one-story perception of the house as viewed from the street. So happy to get into those exhibits more, but I won't spend too much time looking at each of those drawings. So I'm going to go to page 40. This diagram shows the other demonstrable massing change that we have made to address this comment. So the red dashed line represents the previously reviewed massing, and the image, the three-dimensional image below represents what's being proposed now. So in addition to reducing the height of the garage of up to about 4.5 feet on this corner, we have rotated this portion of the upper floor, and that was serves several key functions, which I'll describe to you, including privacy. But by rotating that, this corner gets further away from the neighbor to the west, and this corner, which is the corner as perceived from the street, tucks in. So it reduces the apparent mass of the house as viewed from the street. The other critical portion of this is landscaping. So we have carefully planned locations for prominent trees to screen the taller portions of the house to make it less dominant as you requested. We were inspired by 1257 Farello, which has portions of the house that are 2 and 3 stories as viewed from the street, and they have successfully provided trees to screen those portions of the house. So we have proposed to do the same thing as they have done, and I think that's very successful. I'm going to let Katie, when we get there, talk more about the trees and screening. But that's so successful at 1257 that you can hardly notice those multi-story portions of the house as you go up Farello Road. Correct, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of an orangish yellow house. Okay. Number 3, the board appreciates the desire for modern architecture. However, the applicant should take into consideration the prevalent design styles and massing in the neighborhood in their efforts to reduce the massing of the home. We heard you loud and clear on this one as well, and have responded to that. I wanted to really understand what the prevalent style of the neighborhood was, so I did my own survey of the 25 houses that make up our street, which is from the elbow of Farello Road down to the end of the cul-de-sac. And I was really interested to see the results. Out of those 25 houses, 6 are what appear to me to be original Spanish-style houses. 2 are what were contemporary mid-century tract homes that have been converted to Spanish-ish styles. 2 are some form of medieval cottage, like English cottages, etc. 6 are modern houses. That's 23% of the street. 4 of them are flat-roofed modern houses. 8 are what I would call modern ranch or mid-century kind of tract homes. 69% of those 25 houses on that street are non-Spanish styles other than Spanish styles. So if anything, I was confused and determined there's not a prevalent style of house along that street. But we are, however, consistent with a few key examples of the flat roof modern style, which I reviewed with you at the last hearing, but for the new members, maybe I should bring those up again. Key among them are this property at 1314 Farello Road, which is a flat-roofed 3-story modern house, which this board recently approved. We have this flat-roofed modern house at 917 Paseo Farello, which this board also approved. And then this very important structure of merit, which is a few houses down from us on the same side of the street, located at 1255 Farello Road. Okay. You also asked one more thing I wanted to point out here. In our revisions to our proposed architecture, what we have done, I'm actually going to show you on this exhibit. So what we have done is we added an eave to this structure, which extends out a few feet, to the extent that the ordinance allows us to. And then we have further articulated the garage doors so that it presents a very friendly and approachable pedestrian scale to the street, breaks up the massing. This is concealed behind our street trees, but this steps down gently, and this gives a completely accurate representation of the locations of our proposed street trees, which are screening the portions of the structure. So when I look at this image, the red dashed line represents the previously proposed design. I feel like we have been very successful at doing what you asked us to do, which is make the house appear as a 1-story house as viewed from the street. This eave and this massing, you'll notice we don't have the image of this house, but if you go and look at the street side of that house, it has a similar eave, and the eave does a jig jog right here in the corner in a similar way. It's kind of interesting that they arrived at a similar design solution that we did, but I think this is like a very nice kind of nod of our cap to this important modern historic home down the street. Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 4, explore reduction of the massing in the garage of the front as it appears when viewed from the street, or a possible lowering of the grade so as to appear stepping down or going down to the garage. So we have, as I explained in the previous exhibits, we have done both of those things. And I'll go back to our section to explain to you how that was achieved. Okay, so what we have done here is we have reduced the plate height of the lower level by a foot, and in addition, we lowered the finished floor of this structure by 8 inches to push this down further lower from the street. Then we reduced the plate height of the garage, the primary garage. We reduced it by 1 foot 6 inches. And these changes down below lowered the finished floor of the garage by 1 foot 4 inches. So we have a much less of a slope coming up into the garage. We do still have a slight slope, which is requisite so that we can protect from water intrusion from the street. We have further articulated the garage doors, as I mentioned, and added a breakup in the cladding and the form to make it the form feel broken down in smaller scale as viewed from the street. And yeah, that's all I wanted to mention there. Okay, item number 5, study the privacy issues for the flanking neighbors in regards to the proposed 3rd-story deck. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here to the plans. So here you can see the floor plan of the upper level. The red shaded areas are the areas of nonconformance that we have brought into conformance. I want to zoom in on this area right here, if I could. Okay, so you can see our neighbor to the west, the house footprint right here. Notice that, as we mentioned last time, the property line is right here. We're conforming to our setback, and the neighbor's house is not conforming to their setback. They're encroaching substantially into the setback, and they've built their outdoor space right up to our property line here. So we, after the last hearing, I went and met with these neighbors, and I wanted, while the story poles were still up, I wanted to chat with them and see what that felt like. We're not impacting their view of the ocean in any way, but we just wanted to study how this feels and what this adjacency feels like. So that was one of the major things that drove us to rotate this form, because by rotating it, it pulls this corner far away from the property line. So this corner is now about 19 feet away from the property line, whereas their corner here is maybe, I don't know, this is 6 feet or 7 feet or something like this. This setback right here, when we first reviewed the design with you, our upper level was built right up to the setback. And at our second review, we peeled it back 3 feet and provided that relief. And now we're peeling it back substantially more so that the project steps back away from these neighbors in a substantial way. It also results in the glazing looking away from this neighbor. And you can see the red line representing the previous orientation. So it's looking away from their yard. We studied this with the eye towards how it relates to the neighbors on both sides, and we think this is the best balanced location. It puts this form right in the middle of the lots and not looking towards, with a bias towards one or the other. So this is as good as we think that we can do. The other thing that we've done is we have provided planters on both sides of this very modest outdoor space. This outdoor space is located right in the center of the property, and we have added a planter on both sides to provide some additional relief and buffer and landscape screening. We also have privacy screens on both the east and west sides to protect from the privacy. In addition, we've provided landscape privacy along the entirety of both sides of the property, which Katie, if we have time, will review with you. The single-family design guidelines say that an upper-level deck should be 10 feet away from the property line. We've doubled it on both sides and are 20 feet away from the property line on both sides. So we think that we have addressed that in a very significant way and done a good job at addressing those privacy issues. That is all I got. We have very little time for Katie. Sorry, Katie, but I'll go to you and you can.
Yeah, nothing has changed from our plan, but I'll go over the trees just so we're all on the same page of what the heights are of what we're proposing and what's existing. So I'll start in the front. We have, if you want to point, Dan, to the driveway area, the 3 new trees along the pedestrian entryway below, right there. The 3 new trees there are Brisbane box that get up to 40 feet tall. They're kind of the perfect vertical tree. That's why we selected it, because they stay compact in canopy, but the height is still tall, because this is high fire. So 40 feet tall, 20 feet wide. And then to the north property line, I'll walk you through, there's an existing pineapple guava tree that's significant, 20 feet. That is a large oak tree. To right there. And then the neighboring property does have an existing hedge, approximately 8 feet, I would guess, and we're putting in another hedge that's going to be 8 feet.
And excuse me for interrupting, we're at time, but if you can.
Sure, I'll wrap
Thank
it up. So both sides, the north and south, we have podocarpus that would get to 8 feet. And then to the south property line, we have existing oaks that are significant in height. And there's no comment there. I think it's more of the side property lines. So to the south, we have existing olive trees to remain, and once again, a hedge. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I think that concludes our presentation. We've been through a lot. We've made a lot of changes. We think the project has improved substantially. So we really appreciate your comments and looking forward to any questions.
Thank you. We'd like to now open up the meeting to public comment. Anyone who has provided a speaker slip, if staff can orchestrate that, as well as people from Zoom.
Thank you, Vice Chair. For those attending on Zoom who wish to make oral public comment on this item, you can do so at this time by selecting the raise your hand icon. Staff will call on you and you can unmute yourself. And while we're waiting for those on Zoom, just want to acknowledge we've received 18 written correspondence, so public comment letters were distributed, all were distributed prior to the start of the hearing. We will table the Zoom public comment and turn to general in-person public comment at this time. I have a number of speaker slips here, so in an effort to keep everything streamlined, I will call up the first speaker, let the second speaker know they're on deck. Please approach the podium, ensure that the green light is on. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, and please keep it to the 2 minutes allotted to you. So the first speaker we have, they reside at 1280 Farello Road. If you could please approach the podium. The second speaker will be Reed.
And I would just ask before public comments come to please be respectful of the other comments before you, and to try to not repeat the same things as we are understanding. We appreciate you being here, but we just want to be in respect of all of our time. Thank you.
I basically wrote all my comments on the website. All I want to add is, would you please put up a new story pole so I can see how high it is from my house? I'm above their house. Other than all the dimensions that were mentioned here, I really didn't grasp it all. It'd be nice to see some kind of three-dimensional or some way to put a perspective thing to see how the building is going to be when it is all done. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, you called my name, so that's why I didn't.
No worries.
It's Vijay Gupta, L. Lepola, 1280 Farello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Reed. After that, followed by Carolyn.
Yes, it was.
I think just for time's sake, Mr. Vice Chair, I think we need to, if things were distributed in advance, they have all of them in their packet. And so we're going to just keep that going. And you're more than welcome to share that with the members of the public.
Okay, great. Reed Hornberger, 10 Rubio Road. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I have 2 quick comments. One, to echo what Vijaya has just said, which is story poles. I believe that there has been progress made. I do believe that the last time we set up the story poles, they were very clear in telling to us about the massing of the project, and I think it would be good to put the poles back up and show the incremental changes so we can have that determination. That helped us, and it helped the review board. And the second thing relevant to the picture I'd sent in with mine, specifically when I look at what this board needs to be doing with compatibility, which includes privacy, I'm not quite with Dan yet that the privacy issues have been solved. Not that they can be solved completely. He did say they've addressed them. I believe that. But when I look at the visual pictures of 1277 Farello in particular, which is above the street from the project, I do believe that the privacy issue is still in crisis. And I do believe that while they may still have ability to see the ocean, I look at these pictures and see a significant impact to the views from their home. And I still think it's a result of the house just being too big. Thank you.
Carolyn, next we'll have Wendy.
I'm Carolyn Hornberger, live at 10 Rubio Road. This is the third time I've been up here. It's getting a little frustrating. We keep coming up here to defend our neighborhood. The plans show, to me, almost zero changes in the massive scale that we're all opposed to. I don't know why the applicant is so determined to infringe on the neighbor's privacy. We don't want what I call is almost a Jiffy Lube looking garage. It's dropped by 2 feet. That's insignificant to me. If you look at the plans and you look at it at street level, it's massive. It looks like a commercial piece of property. I'm not sure I trust this process anymore. The board's given specific feedback repeatedly. The neighbors have given specific feedback repeatedly. It's called being informed and voicing our concerns. Ms. McGinnis, you called us out in a letter as being intractable neighbors, and we take offense to that. There's a flagrant behavior by the applicants, and they've ostracized the homeowner and the architect from our community. It didn't have to be this way, but they show complete disrespect to the neighbors and our substantiated concerns. And I don't want to be bribed with olive trees and wine left on my front doorstep. Please stop that. This ultra-modern three-story monstrosity doesn't fit, not on this lot and not in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Wendy, and then Michael, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy Edmonds. I live at 1234 Farello Road. I won't repeat what's in my letter since everyone has read that, but what I would like to talk about is 22.69.050 neighborhood preservation, grading, vegetation, removal ordinance findings, and then it goes on to talk about hillside design district and slope lot findings. So I think we're all in agreement. This lot is in the hillside design district, and it's definitely a slope lot. So it says under B1, natural topography protection, the development including the proposed, I meant 2, building scale. The development maintains a scale and form that blends with the hillside by minimizing the visual appearance of structures and the overall height of structures. I don't feel the Single-Family Design Board can actually agree to this finding. So when you are going through your process, based on what's been presented to us, I don't see how you can actually call out this finding that you're in agreement with it. So I wanted to mention that. I think that the owner and architect seem to be ignoring the guidelines that are set, and the city has spent considerable time on that. I believe it's possible to build the house the owner wants by using the topography of the lot. And so I would encourage you to deny the project as it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
I have a visual image. Can you project this for me, please?
Was this distributed to the board prior?
No.
Okay.
It's a new image. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask. My name is Michael
Just
Marzola.
one moment. Sorry to interrupt, but
That's all right.
we'll have Rose after Michael.
Okay. Ready? Get set, go. My name is Michael Marzola. I live at 1269 Farello Road. Attorney McGinnis, in her letter to the board, stated that Mr. Marzola has submitted another letter, but it isn't clear that he or his wife understand the current proposal. What is clear is that their deck is on property line, that they have, this is quoting her, that their deck is on the property line, and that they have done nothing to screen or landscape the deck or home from 1269. She has falsely stated that our deck is on the property line and that we have done nothing to screen or landscape our home from 1269. Our deck is not on the property line and is fully permitted and screened. I would like an apology and a retraction from Ms. McGinnis for false accusations and for spreading false information to the board. Her letter cannot be relied upon as fact. In regards to our privacy concerns, I have a photo that I would like to include in the record. I just gave that to you. That I took while the story poles were being installed on the roof of 1269. They were standing in an area, a proposed third floor structure. They're looking directly onto our deck, our screen deck, by the way, over our screening. They have also a similar view into our dining room and kitchen. This is unacceptable and does not adhere to the good neighborhood guidelines regarding privacy. Finally, after a thorough review of the proposed plans, I note that a minimal reduction of bulk and scale and the square footage is about the same. I also noted errors in the plan, such as the placement of a non-existent window on the upper story of the east-facing side of the current structure. I also note that the proposed third story has been moved towards our property, thus increasing the view from the third story onto our property, further impinging on our privacy, as noted in the picture. Landscaping does not mitigate the privacy issue. In closing, the looming bulk and scale of this project and its lack of sensitivity to the neighborhood guidelines is disturbing, as you will note from the reaction of our neighbors. Urge you request an additional redesign, and that will include denial of a third story and reduction of the bulk and scale of the proposed building. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Rose, followed by Becky.
I also have something to project.
Was this distributed prior? I had.
And I actually have another one that goes after that.
If you could, so it's more important for the board members and the applicant to see this, so if you could pass them along, I'll make sure that all of our board members see, and we'll make sure that Vice Chair Kalas can also see.
Could you put those up on the
We
screen,
will, if you
please?
want to go ahead.
Okay. My name is Rose Wills. I live next door to this project. I am actually very livid over comments made by attorney Miss Janet McGinnis. In her letter, she states that my deck is on the property line, which it is not, and that they have done nothing to screen or landscape their deck or home from 1269. This is entirely false and misleading. My deck is not on the property line. It's permitted. It's legal. It's fully screened, and there's a photo of it. What's clear to me is that Ms. McGinnis is trying to mislead the board by her comments. She put this in a public comment. Mr. Weber has shifted the proposed third story. Could I, you put the other rendering in there?
They're the two images that you gave us. And
Could you put the other one in there, please?
I don't think we're clear on which one you're talking about. They're both.
The one with the red. Those are windows overlooking my, oh, sorry. Okay, Mr. Weber has shifted the design of the house. Those windows will be overlooking my screened legal deck, my house, my living space. I will have no privacy. I have no privacy in my house, not in my yard, not on my deck. This project does not meet the good neighbor guidelines regarding privacy. It does not meet the guidelines as stated in the neighborhood preservation findings. I am really disappointed that a potential neighbor would have such disrespect for our neighborhood and his neighbors that he has to resort to misrepresentation, falsehood, manipulation. I ask the board to please, please, please deny this project, deny the third story. That garage on top of a
Thank you.
garage
We're
does
gonna-
not belong there.
Time is up, but thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Becky. Becky, I understand you provided a public comment letter that can be distributed post-hearing.
Well, it just didn't make, for some reason, in the minutes, but
Yeah, we
I
can do
brought a
that.
copy.
We'll have Emma next. after.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, you're up. Sorry, I'm just getting the next person on deck.
Oh, my God.
Sorry for the confusion. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm, like all the other neighbors, I received my notice the other day and thought, what are we doing? For the third time, we've come, Mr. Weber has shown his design, and you guys have commented that it either needs to be compatible or blend into the topography. We might have had a chance to even see that it was lowered in size, except he took down the story poles like 5 days before the meeting, where he could have marked them in red flags very easy and said, this is our changes. And that would have given us a better insight to what we're going to look at. He mentioned the orange house down the street that is 3 stories. I believe it's unpermitted, but even more importantly, it sits way back and there's a huge oak tree. So yes, you cannot see it, but it's because of that it sits back off the street. The house that he commented on the mid-century, 1255, I believe, or I'm not sure, they definitely signed the petition saying this house is not representation of our neighborhood. And it was in a petition that we all submitted earlier in the process. I just ask that you bring the story poles back up, that the new member gets a chance to look, because we sit directly above this. And even though we have 20-foot hedges, we will look directly into the top of this house that will now be covered with solar panels. And yeah, we can still see the ocean, but what we're going to really see is a flat roof full of solar panels. And that's our complaint. But I also understand the privacy, and I do think if he put the story poles back up with the changes, it would at least help us. Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time. Oh.
Thank you. We'll have Emma next, followed by Consuelo. Pass it down, yeah.
Question for Ms. Brinkman. Is this, was this circulated in advance? No, this is new. Thank you.
Looks like it.
We'll make
Please
sure we get
proceed with your
copies.
comments.
It will all be part of public.
I'm Emma Brinkman, and my home is at 1261 Farella Road. The image I've brought to share with you shows the existing south-facing second-story deck. As you can see, the deck as is has an unobstructed and expansive view to the city, ocean, and islands. Proposed for this deck is a 17-foot expansion to the easterly interior setback line. On the western side, this deck will be expanded to the south as a rooftop deck, which will cover the proposed addition to the first level. The proposed third-story rooftop deck will have privacy impacts for at least 7 neighbors, and I'm one of them. I was in my backyard on the patio when the story poles were put up, and I was able to see the workmen on the roof of the house where the third story is proposed. I had a direct sight line to the workmen as they had to me. To give you an idea where our home is in relation to this property, I don't think the picture isn't up, but there is a palm tree that is on our property that you can see. Only one owner will have the benefit of a slightly enhanced view at the expense of at least 7 neighbors losing their privacy. The third-story deck and structure will set a precedent for future development. At this time, there are no approved backyard-facing third-story decks on Farella Road. The concern here is that if approved, we will see a proliferation of large boxy homes with decking all around. This results in a scenario that will contribute to the loss of sensitivity to neighbors in a quest for that perfect view. In 2016, a prior board rejected a request for a third-level backyard-facing deck for just this reason I mentioned. It is imperative the board stays
Excuse me
consistent
for
with that
interrupting.
decision. Thank you.
But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. Next, Consuelo, followed by Charlie.
Hi. Hi. Hello again. This is only my second time speaking, and I am really at a loss at what to say. We've had numerous individuals from the neighborhood that are so professional and well-spoken, written, and given multiple examples of what we will face as a neighborhood. As an individual, my husband and I are at 1277 Forello, and we are directly next to 1269. So we are we will be greatly affected by the third story that they are planning on building. We will have basically a 30-foot wall that we will stare at every moment of waking hour that we're home to evening, stars, sunrise, sunsets, well, not the sunset, moonrises. I greatly also was offended by the attorney, and I have 3 attorneys in my family, so I understand how attorneys work, but she diminished our structure of merit. It's just really upsetting for us, and we don't know what to do. From my bed, our bed in our backyard, adjacent, parallel to this structure, I can see the story poles, the house. We'll be able to see the decks. We'll be able to, see everything from our jacuzzi, everything. So we'll have no more privacy. And you could put up barriers, all that you want. It doesn't matter. You lose your privacy. We've tried to be friendly. We've had Mr. Comforter over to go over things. We've had Dan over. We've invited the board over to come and see what we will be facing. And the attorney, if she wants to come over, if she's not rude, she's very welcome. But again, I don't know what to say except that we would really appreciate not having to be intruded on so much and to be able to enjoy our home, because it's our dream home as well. And so why should we not have the views that we've had and that we've worked on for years and years and years? Thank you.
Thank you. The last speaker slip I have here is for Charlie.
Hi, I'm Charlie Boss. Consuelo and I live in the house next door that she was just talking about. It was just designated a structure of merit, by the way. I guess you all know that. I'd like to tell you about a very small epiphany I had not long ago, back in December. When we came back from the trip, the story poles were up. And as I said the last time I was here, it was quite amazing, quite frightening, upsetting. I looked at them, and our neighbor Rose, who was just here, gave me a photograph where they superimposed the second and third story onto a photograph of our house from the deck. They superimposed it such that it was lined up with the story poles, so there was no question that it superimposed correctly, showing the view that we would now have, or if this project were carried through. What I saw was that now the second story, as well as the third story, were visible, whereas in the September plans, only the third story was visible from our house. So it was kind of a mystery. What I found out was that obviously it went up 5 feet, and so now the maximum, instead of 25 feet like it was in September, is 30 feet. Presumably, that was to enable those 2 floors to have 10 or 12-foot ceilings, I suppose. So from this I learned that things don't always work the way you think. You think that the architect gets direction, he takes the direction, and things improve. But in this case, things got worse. I have 2 more things I need to say.
Excuse me, but I apologize, we're at time.
First one is that
would like to.
I want to quote from your document.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but this.
You guys wrote the City of Santa Barbara Single-Family Residence Design Guidelines. It says, design your addition or your new house as if you were going to be.
Yeah, excuse me.
I'm sorry, but
we'd like to
the
stop.
vice chair has asked you to stop.
And just
Thank you.
checking our Zoom public comment. Ms. Gu, do you see any hands raised for this item?
Actually, I do not see any hands raised on this particular item this time. Thank you.
Okay, so with this, we'll close public comment and back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you. So we will now return this to the board for questions. Board Member Anderson, any questions?
Wow, such emotion.
Excuse me, it's to the board only. I apologize. Board Member Anderson.
Yes, it is. I think, Mr. Architect, if you could spend some time, you've did a bunch of additional studies with the view cones and what you've brought up on the screen here to justify the neighbors' concern about privacy. And it sounds like you've talked to everybody. Do you have support from the adjacent neighbors at all, is my first question.
Well, it's frustrating that it doesn't appear that we're able to have a productive and collaborative conversation with the neighbors. We've really tried our best and have made bunches of changes, and we think that we've gone a long way to address the issues that the board has asked us to address. As you know, it's not the neighbor's job to evaluate and approve the design. It's your job, and I think it's a responsibility that we'd like you to take seriously and to use your own judgment and your own leadership to evaluate and objectively try to understand whether or not we have addressed what you asked us to address, whether we have conformed to the guidelines, and whether we have adequately addressed all of the issues related to the design that have been brought up by you. And there's neighbors that you're hearing from that are many houses away, and the onus is upon you, in my opinion, to understand the validity of those comments.
To the
If we
members
can
of
keep
the
it down, please, as board only to this table. Thank you.
Oh, is there anything else you wanted me to show
Well,
you?
I think this covers, I'm not sure that all the neighbors have gone through all the details of all the documents to understand, what's been proposed. So this section, to me, shows what's not visible with your third floor or basement plus 2 floors that you want to call it. So hopefully people in the neighborhood can see that diagram, and maybe you did those additional view cones of your adjacent neighbors there. Would you want to bring those up? Explain that a little bit further.
Yeah, this diagram that's on the screen is representing a visibility triangle from inside the space. The red shaded areas being the non-visible portions. Obviously, this is from one position. What other diagrams do I really want to?
So yes, you're going to see the neighbor's backyard beyond.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's typical in this neighborhood that we of course, our client doesn't want to look into the neighbor's backyard. They want to look over the neighbor's house, just like our uphill neighbors look over our house. And that's how the Riviera works. Everyone looks over the house that's downhill from them to try to, capture the view that's important to everyone who spoke tonight. It's important to our client as well. So, there's. I think that's all I want to say on that item.
Okay. Thanks. If you could explain the garage door finish and how it opens for me, and I think it's a 9-foot height on the garage door, and then I think you have some railing along that driveway as well? That
Sure. Okay, so we're looking at the elevation of the garage that faces the street. So we have wood cladding that, matches the wood cladding at the rest of the house, which is a naturally weathering,
your
natural colored wood.
Right.
And then these garage doors are going to be clad in a similar wood, but with a different pattern. We don't quite know the pattern. We'll show you that at final review.
Okay.
And this opens as a double bifolding operation. So this bifolds to that side and that bifolds to that side.
Okay. So no glass. And then I'm assuming the granules on the roof are going to be as dark as they can so that the solar panels and everything looks like one black, dark gray finish roof.
Yeah, what we have proposed on the roof right now is a gravel ballast. And so it's probably going to be a membrane roof that'll be TPO or PVC, and then it'll be covered with a decorative gravel ballast that will be like in the warm to dark gray.
Yeah, I would think you want to, if you
and we're
blend it.
suggesting kind of a boulderscape on the house. Unfortunately, the fire department doesn't allow us to do a green roof, or we would do a green roof, but we're proposing to do some type of a boulderscape to make it feel like a kind of natural and part of that kind of vegetated view shed that you see when you look out from above down over the treetops.
Gotcha.
And the PV panels are required. So we're estimating approximately the size of PV that's necessary to power the project on this drawing. But yeah, we want it to be handsome. We want it to be very well organized and handsome when you look down on it from above. And we also want, one of the things that was important to some of the neighbors that we talked about, not across the street, but way up the hill, is that the tree canopies broke up the massing. So I think we've done that successfully too with the tree canopies, and maybe it's best looked at in this exhibit right here. The tree canopies that are between the garage and the street, when you go up higher, these tops of these tree canopies are going to break that eave line of the garage, so that it makes the structure feel more nestled into the landscape.
Right. So, I mean, from the street view, it's a one-story. I think that there's a misconception out there of, so I don't know if you want to go back to the existing house, but maybe that would help. You're adding a floor on that existing house.
Where would I?
And you're really only 4 feet higher on the new south side than from the existing house, from what I read on your dimensions on the plans.
Let me see.
If you could confirm that.
Yeah, here's this image is the existing house from the street. The question is, how much higher than the existing house is the proposed design?
Well, you're basically adding another floor on the existing house. You already have the basement, so basement plus 2.
Correct.
And you're pushing everything back.
Correct.
Meeting the setbacks.
Yes.
So,
correct.
Yeah, it's just hard to find that in a complicated set of design drawings. But the finished floors are all the same. You've brought the plate heights down, so I believe that's all. I could go on and on, but I won't get that nitty gritty.
Thank you. Board Member Graffiti would, for questions, but before we do, would like to confirm that you've reviewed the plans, the previous meetings and recordings.
I have, the only clarifying question I have is I did not see the story poles, and I don't know if that's a requirement.
Vice Chair Arkelian, through you, no, that's not a requirement. Just for the record, to clarification that you've watched all the previous videos and read the meeting minutes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two questions. One is just clarifying from the front view from the street. I think Board Member Anderson mentioned 4 feet differential, but just want you to confirm from the current structure today from the street view versus what the proposed height is, like the height, overall height or height differential.
Sure. I don't know if I have that precise dimension, but we can certainly look at a drawing, an exhibit that will give you a sense of that. We might have that dimension. I don't have them superimposed in the set.
While
We
you're
might not,
finding
we might
that.
not be able to get that for you.
Okay, a question on the landscape side, the 3 mature trees that you're planting, the front, I think you mentioned Brisbane box. What size are you?
We haven't decided. I think significant height, at least 36-inch box in size. And open to, conditioning the size.
Just to the applicant, I believe you're on old plans. I don't know if that's intended or not.
Oh, no, it was not intended, thank you, but I was looking at the at the existing drawing anyway, so I will. Thanks, Holly. I'm trying to get there. Let me see if I can get it for you. Okay, so in absolute terms, the top of ridge of the existing house is 259 feet above sea level, 259 feet and 11 inches above sea level. And the top of the garage that's close to the street is 263 plus probably a foot or something for the roof, so 264 and a half. Yeah, so it's sorry? Oh, okay, so let's just call it 265 to make the math easier. So it's about 5 feet higher. The roof of the garage that's closest to the street is 5 feet higher than the top of the existing eave of the existing house.
Of the eave.
Yeah. Of the eave. So
Okay.
when I say the eave, what I mean is, here, I'll show you.
Yeah, okay.
The ridge, the top of, sorry, yeah,
the
I
ridge
should have
line.
said the ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right, I'm talking about right there, top of that ridge. Yeah, so the top of the garage is about 5 feet higher than the top of this ridge. And then it steps up as the form steps up as you get further away from the street. As you can see right here. So see, the garage is lower, then it steps up another 20 inches or so.
Okay.
So it's like 5 feet higher than the existing ridge here, and it's maybe 6.5 feet higher than the existing ridge by the time you're back here.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you. And Chair Kalas, do you have any questions?
I do. Before I ask questions, I need to disclose that I received a phone call this past weekend from, I believe the name was a Mr. Brian Perkowitz. I believe he's a neighbor. And he was concerned about potential improper notification as a neighbor, and I redirected him to staff. We did not discuss specifics about the project, but I did need to disclose that that took place. I don't know how he got my number, but he did. Let's see, I have 2 questions, I think. One is, I'm wondering if Mr. Weber can respond to the visuals that the speaker named Rose shared with us, those were the side-by-side photos of what I think would be their westerly, I believe they're the neighbor to the east of the parcel. And those were the two photos that showed their screened deck and what looked like the location for windows that would potentially be looking over their deck.
Sure.
I'm wondering if we can
Okay.
understand how you propose to deal with privacy there.
Why don't I start on this exhibit that shows the.
Oh, wait, can we, Ms. Gu, can we go back to the applicant's presentation first, and then we'll ask City TV to swap?
Okay.
Just state the number of the page or something. So.
Okay, I will start on page 98 of our exhibit package. So the deck that was being mentioned is this. Is that coming from?
Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So the deck from which I believe those photos that you're talking about, or the photo was taken, is this deck right here. So this deck is a second-story deck that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Weber. Just for reference, those are not the two photos. The photo on the left is one of the photos, but the photo on the right of the long balcony. This is not your presentation, Mr. Weber. These are the documents provided by Rose.
Which we don't have.
Right, I understand. I was giving you the context for the issue at hand.
Right. So the photo that you have your hand on right now, Ms. Anderson, that is one of the photos.
Uh-huh.
But then there was another photo that just showed. Yes. There you go. Thank you.
Right, I'm aware of what you were discussing, and that's what I was responding to. So that deck from which that photo is taken is this deck right here. So the current owners of that built this deck, and this board approved that deck. So that deck is built up to, it looks like it's built right up to the setback to me, and it looks directly at the deck that was just in the photo, Lauralee, that's underneath the long deck. It looks directly at it. And the photo that you were discussing is conveniently cropped to look at this partial height screening wall right there, that kind of horizontal slatted wall.
Excuse me, if we can just keep it to the board, thank you.
But just to the left of that image is an open rail. And if you were to see beyond that open rail, you look right at our client's deck, and it's right there. So there is that substantial tree right there, which is on our neighbor's property, and that's a big tree. It's, I don't know how many feet tall, 30, 40 feet tall. It's a nice big tree with a big canopy that provides a substantial privacy buffer between the two properties. And this deck, I can imagine, because all of the neighbors want to capture the ocean view, which is kind of diagonal out this way, was designed to capture that diagonal view. And that photo was taken as looking back up this way. So, just realize that that's not the primary orientation of that deck. That deck is designed to capture the ocean view, which we can all appreciate.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is the large tree that you were just pointing to in the photo, or you were alluding to, is that tree to remain as part of your project?
It's not our tree. It's on the neighbor's property, and it's immediately next to this deck. It's about right here. Where I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's about right here.
Okay, thank you.
So another thing in that photo of the story poles, those story poles are before that rotational move. So that rotational move pulled this corner further back from where it was when those photos were taken. So a benefit to the privacy. Did I address the comment there? I think I got everything addressed there. The other thing in those photos is there's no privacy landscaping here. That is or I shouldn't say no, there's very limited and sparse privacy landscaping with gaps between it. And we're going to be planting substantial privacy landscaping that grows quite tall here to increase that privacy barrier between the two properties.
Okay. You did partially answer my question. So if we went back to the exhibit from from Rose, I believe was her name, where it's showing the windows that are proposed, are those now rotated back further to the north?
That's correct. Yeah.
So how far do you think those might have adjusted to the right of that photo?
Let me put an exhibit on the screen. Can you see the drawings, Leslie?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see the red dashed outline is the previously proposed design that corresponded to the story poles, and the drawing underneath is the proposed design. So it rotated back, I don't know, that's maybe 3.5, 4 feet north, and the corner got another like 18 inches maybe to the east.
Okay. And can you just, in plan view, can you just, put your cursor on where that window is, where the fenestration is there? Is that
right here? Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
And there's a
corner window.
screen. There's a screen over that window, because there's some chance we have proposed so much vegetation, high trees, and everything, but there's a chance that there might be some little tiny window from the street where you can see towards this glass, but we want this to feel very private up here and not have that chance of like getting any glimpse of the glass from the street. So that's why there's that screen proposed there.
Okay. And then the other windows that we saw in that mock-up from the neighbor, I thought there was another one.
Yeah,
it's that window.
Yeah, there's a window back here. So one of the highlighted ones is, back, I don't know, 30, 40 feet away from the property line. That's a small window in the garage. And then that's it. There's no windows on the second floor. There are in the current condition. There's some windows down here, including a funny condition where our neighbors have a kitchen windows right here, and the current design has a bathroom window right here. And when you walk up to the toilet, you get a direct view into the kitchen. So we're rectifying that. We're eliminating all the windows along the second floor. There's 0 windows where you have that direct privacy, plus this landscape privacy, which will be quite tall there. So I think the privacy is actually going to be better post-project than it is today.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was, there was a comment made by, I think, one of the speakers, Charlie, and his concern, or maybe it was Emma, Ms. Brinkman, looking at my notes here, which I was scribbling rapidly, so bear with me. The primary concern, or one of the major concerns, was precedent setting relative to a third floor level deck in the neighborhood. Have you found whether there are any third floor level decks in the neighborhood that you think would be something you could point to that would be precedent to this project?
Yeah, definitely. The house that is a few down has outdoor spaces on each level, I believe. I think this house that is right up the street from us, which is this one, has a third, pretty substantial third floor decks right there. I haven't done, Leslie, a comprehensive survey with that in mind around the neighborhood, but I'm sure there's others that exist.
Okay. So to be clear, this will be a deck that serves the third floor, or I'll call it the second floor above street driveway grade. Is that right?
Well, it's the It's here, why don't I go back to the,
I just want to make sure that we're not ending up with a roof deck over the top of the garage or over the top of the third floor. If we have one that's serving the master bedroom on the third level, and that is at the same floor level, I understand that. But if all of a sudden we have somebody standing up on the top where the solar panels are, that may be an issue for me.
oh yeah, no, we're not proposing that.
Somebody's going to get
So
sunburned if they do that too. But.
Not sure if you can see the elevation drawing that's on the screen, but the street you drive, yeah, sorry, this is page A203 in the drawing set. This is the driveway, so you drive directly in the garage here. You walk through the garage into the bedroom, and that deck is at that same level. So the floor elevation of that outdoor space is near street level, maybe a couple feet higher, 18 inches, 2 feet higher than street level, something like that. Yeah, it's not up on top of the roof up here.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not stacking one up there too. Okay, I think those were my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kalas. My only question is, or actually I have two. Can we go to page 90 of the massing study?
Page of the exhibits.
Of the
I think you're
exhibits.
talking about.
Please.
Yeah.
Can we zoom in, please?
This darn thing. Is that looking good enough for you?
Sure. So I noticed from the sections, is the residence shown there behind the garage? Is that above the glazing?
Sorry, this?
Yes.
No, this is, the red dashed line is the height of the previously proposed design. And this bluishness is TV Hill behind, way, 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 way in the distance. You're seeing the top of TV Hill peeking out there.
Can we go to A203? Can we go back there?
Sure.
But that red line indicates roughly that back master bedroom because it's 21 inches.
Well, it's a little bit higher than what that is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And depending on the, how tall your eyeball is above the street, you're looking up at this eve at an angle.
Got it.
Just like you do at every house, you look up, if it's higher than your eyeball, you're looking up at it, so you see sky in the distance.
I understand. The other question I had, just to clarify from Board Member Anderson's question about the neighbors, could you confirm again? It was a major point from the previous board chair about collaborating with the neighbors. I just want to confirm how much collaboration with the neighbors you've had since the last hearing about a month ago.
We, since the last hearing, we're honing in on issues that we really needed to understand. And the one thing that we hadn't been able to do prior to the last hearing is look at the story poles from Charlie and Consuelo's outdoor space, which is our neighbor immediately to the west. So that we did that at the between the last hearing and today.
So, and that's it. You just reviewed the story post from.
Well,
or-
I should say that we in response to their concerns, we made a pretty substantial change in their favor, and that's represented by rotating this entire upper level by, I'm not sure the degree of rotation, 15 degrees or so that we made sure that these story poles don't have the ability to look down into their outdoor space. They look away from them. And we also further stepped them out. Like, we stepped it away once, now we've stepped it away again in a demonstrable way subsequent to meeting with Charlie and Consuelo at their property.
I appreciate it. That's all the questions I had. If we can now go to the board for comments. Board Member Anderson, any comments?
And Mr. Vice Chair, just to be clear to, for board members that this applicant is requesting project design approval today.
You've done a lot of work. 111 pages of FARs, oh my gosh, like, and all of the vision. Just wish everybody could, I don't know, be in agreement, but anyways, I believe the reduction of the plate heights and the work that you've done have answered and addressed our comments previously. I think that there, again, that there's kind of this misconception of a 3-story when it's 1 story or 6 feet higher than the existing ridge of that existing garage. And you've pushed it back to the 30-foot setback. If you pushed it out further on the site, it's going to block more views. To me, you've done a lot of work to address the neighbors' concerns. So that's all of my comments, basically, at this point.
Thank you, Board Member Graffiti. Do you have any comments? And before, if we can, if I can ask the board members in their comments whether they believe it's appropriate to go for PDA or for it to return to the full board. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe it's ready for approval.
Thank you, Board Member Graffiti. Any comments?
Yes, I would agree with Board Member Anderson's comments, and then I would add, just around, I know the style was previously discussed of the home, and whether there was precedent or not for it for that style in the neighborhood. I think it's a tough one. I did spend a lot of time on that street and in the neighborhood. I think because of the variance of the homes in the neighborhood and the examples of the modern homes in the neighborhood, I do find it to be compatible with the neighborhood.
Thank you. Chair Kalas, any comments?
Yeah, I think that the revisions that have been made are positive, and I'm really happy to see them. I would have loved if you had come to us with Dan with a nice Mediterranean home that would have looked just really like it had been there forever in this particular neighborhood. But I understand every owner, wants what they want. And I think the fact that you've tried your best to get this to really feel like 1 story from the road helps potentially minimize the impact of the variation in the architecture from what I think is kind of more the fabric of the neighborhood. I understand the neighbors' concerns. I honestly think that in a perfect world, we would see some story poles again, because I frankly think with what you've done, it would assuage some of the concerns of the neighbors. And it might be an opportunity where everybody could feel yummy and move forward without trepidation. I don't know how the other board members feel about that. It might be worth a point of discussion. I think the rotation that you've done is very helpful, and I think it will serve a lot of the privacy concerns. I do have some concern about the large glazing, the large window at the entry stair that faces the westerly neighbor. I don't know if that causes issues for them from a light standpoint, or I don't know. I'm just wondering if that wants to be some other type of glazing. You know, does that want to be frosted or ground glass, or something that would help diffuse light if it's coming out of there in the evening hours? I think those are probably my major comments. I would like to know what the other board members think about the idea of seeing some revised story poles up there.
Mr. Vice Chair, may I make staff comment? So this project was deemed complete on December 1st of 2022 under Permit Streamlining Act, which is a state act. This board has to make a decision on the project within 60 days. So I just want to, February 1st is the deadline. So I would, I just want to put that in context that from a story pole standpoint, first of all, it was this applicant volunteered to do story poles. They weren't part of the requirement, but generally that's something that we ask for as part of concept review or like within the first or second concept. So, but again, we're pushing up against permit streamlining from a timing standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
So to be clear, we have approximately 2 weeks before we have to make a determination on the project.
So there's only, Chair Kalas, through you, the only available meeting after this is January 30th. And so there's technically one more opportunity for this board to make a decision. I would acknowledge that the applicant can grant a one-time 90-day extension to permit streamlining, but there's no guarantee, they're not obligated to accept that. And so there's only one more hearing between this one and the permit streamlining deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so my comments. Appreciate the amount of time you've put into the revisions. This is a substantial construction in a hillside neighborhood with narrow lots. Everyone's a bit closer together compared to other hillside areas in Santa Barbara. So I appreciate everyone's patience in order to try to come to a design that we can try to come to an agreement with. I believe the proposed landscaping is appropriate, and the 84% FAR is acceptable, supportable. Do appreciate the applicant's attempt to reduce the height of the garage and push it down by 1 foot, approximately 1 foot. I'm struggling a bit with. I understand that the applicant has presented that it's ultimately the decision of the board to whether it's compatible per our guidelines or not. And as much as I believe that's true, I also believe there's a level of cooperation that needs to be put into the neighbors. I understand it's a tight 1 month window, and I would have liked to see a little bit more cooperation. Seeing the level of public comments in compared to the last meeting is still a substantial number, and I would have liked to see some more support in, but I do appreciate how you're trying to turn the third floor, do some other improvements to the massing there. I would ask the maker of the motion if they believe it's appropriate for, if they do not believe it's appropriate for PDA for them to define, what exactly needs to be improved here. I do not believe revised story poles are needed. I believe the story poles that were put up was a good starting indicator. I do believe, I've been studying, I went back to the property, I did walk Farello, Rubio, and Paseo Farello. What I saw with 1255 Farello in their flat roof structure, it's a nice modern design, but I did notice that, the residence has an attached garage, and the residence, the residence has a lower roof height than the attached garage roof height. So it's kind of like this stepping. I'm not, when I look at A203 on the sections, I'm not really seeing that behavior as much, and I would, given the architectural style that you've really firmly put in, despite me trying to ask for a combination roof or alternates and trying to make this mesh with the neighborhood, since that hasn't happened, I would just ask for not the garage, but the residence, for that, if that can be brought down. Perhaps we can discuss, if the board is okay with that, we can discuss how many feet the residence can be brought down. But I mean, it's up to the board. I'm just one opinion. You need a majority approval. So if it doesn't work out for me, you still have the okays with everyone else. But that is what I would suggest in order to create that stepped effect that's going on at Farello, and how I did study. I really appreciate the photographs of the modern house on Paseo Farello and 1255 Farello, and how those step down. And, I do agree with a past public comment on how well those properties have stepped down. I know you're doing your best to address what we've expressed in the motion, but would like a little bit more work in bringing that down. I'm not going against the FAR, but bringing down the residence itself. And those are my comments. Thank you.
May I, quick word? There's a severe limitation to lowering the house further, and we're up against that. So that warrants more discussion if that's going to be a part of the motion, because it's likely not going to be a result in a change between now and the next hearing.
Can I just, do we say we're having an open forum right now for conversation, Vice Chair Cohan?
Yes, that's fine, Chair Colas.
Question for Mr. Weber, because it's going to feed into this discussion point. Can you tell us what the approximate thickness is of I'll call it the fascia, for lack of a better way of putting it, the horizontal banding that's around the master bedroom area on the third floor? I'm trying to figure out how much taller that is than the height of the garage. Looks like it's about maybe 16, 18 inches taller, something in that neighborhood.
Correct, approximately 18 inches.
Okay. So since I'm sitting at my computer at home, I have the advantage of being able to draw a line on the drawings right now. And if you are a pedestrian standing at street level, your eye is going to be stopped by the top of the fascia at the garage, and you will not, in theory, be able to read the thickness of that fascia or that banding at the master bedroom, from what I can tell. Just, and I've drawn that line just for everybody's edification on sheet A203 and elevation 2 of that sheet. Now, that's not to say when you get lower down the hill, you might not read it, or higher on the hill, you might not read it. I understand your concern there, Mr. Arakelian, and I think, it is somewhat counterintuitive to hillside guidelines to have that step up, when really what we're trying to do is reinforce houses stepping down the hillside. So I can appreciate the desire to see that dropped, but I think from a practical standpoint, you might not read that step up. So I just want to share that observation.
Well, and I think the existing constraints of the existing basement, which set the finished floor height and all the various plate heights above, are dictating that height. And what do you have on that master bedroom? It's a 9-foot plate.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right.
so you dropped that before. I mean, you.
We did. When
have-
we first reviewed it with you, it was 10, and we reduced it to 9. Or
Is
10,
the
it might have been
second floor-
10.6 or something.
Is the second floor plate also dictated by existing structure?
So if you can see, Leslie, the elevation that's on the screen, this portion of the structure is where the existing house is. So that's built on top of existing floor framing and an existing basement that has a low 8-foot plate below it. So that sets that floor level, and then we have a plate structure that sets the levels of the bedroom. Since we're demolishing the existing garage, at this line right here, we become detached from that limitation. So that's why we were able to take this space and depress it down into the site another 8 inches. At some point, we're up against there's grading that's been done in the existing condition where the current driveway is. So we can't keep going down and down there without digging a deep pit that's going to start to become unfeasible. But that allowed us to depress that down and reduce those plate heights and reduce the place of the garage, which reduces the mass experienced from the street.
How tall is the glazing at the second floor? You're showing an 11-foot 8 and an 1/8 inch floor-to-floor height, but we don't know how tall that glazing is there.
10
that
feet.
Full height glazing.
10 feet.
Any other questions, Chair Kalas, before we go into motion drafting?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to see if we can draft a motion here, if anyone would like to. Have any comments, staff? No? Okay.
Actually, I do have a comment. So if the maker of the motion, depending on how it goes, just want to be really specific and kind of make sure you identify kind of your rationale for whatever it is you're making a decision on.
Leslie, are you going? Or is it me?
I'll make an effort here.
Okay, I can add on, or vice versa.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I would like to make a motion that the project be given project design approval and return to the full board for final with the following comments. We would prefer that we would like to see the second floor reduced by 1 foot. The third floor at 9-foot plate height is acceptable. We appreciate the applicant's efforts over the course of this project to remove square footage outside of the required setbacks, existing square footage out of the existing setbacks, and to reduce the height of the project so that it will be better perceived as a one-story structure from Farello Road. The applicant has adjusted the third floor massing in response to what we believe are concerns from the easterly neighbor. And we believe that the project is compliant with hillside design guidelines in that the massing does step down and roughly parallel topography. We understand the applicant is working with existing structure and is constrained by that. We believe that the majority of glazing is south facing, and we would encourage any glazing that faces neighbors directly to the east or west be diffused in nature or screened in a similar manner as they have already with wood slats. That's my motion. If I need to make findings, if those could be brought up onto the...
Yes, Chair Kawas, please make the findings. They should be on your screen.
Okay. We believe that we can make the neighborhood preservation findings of consistency in appearance because the proposed structure will effectively read as one story from Farello Road, which continues development patterns on the Riviera where the low side of streets are typically one story and those above a street are typically taller. There are precedents in the neighborhood for varied architectural styles, provided that they are more demure, and we think that has been achieved because of the lowering of the structure. I think those items also speak to compatibility in terms of size, bulk, and scale. The FAR is beneath the guideline FAR, and the applicant has worked hard to bring the FAR down. Although the architectural materials being used are not traditional Santa Barbara materials, they are of a quality nature, and they tend to be generally neutral in color, which is promoted in the Hillside Design District. I don't believe that any significant trees are being removed. Can I be reminded of that by another board member? Is that correct? Or can the applicant please confirm that for me?
That's correct.
Okay, so there are no significant trees being removed. And as part of the motion, I would like to suggest that an arborist be retained to look at the tree that is between this parcel and the easterly neighbor to confirm any requirements to protect that tree during construction. The health, safety, and welfare of the public will be met because this project will meet all code requirements. It will have to meet high fire zone. And again, square footage has been removed from side yard setbacks, which allows greater access for emergency personnel in the event of a fire or another emergency. The applicant appears to have responded to the greatest degree possible in regards to privacy concerns by moving massing in response to those concerns. And public views are expected to be visible over the top of the new structure because the reduced height. The existing topography is being worked with. The residence is stepping down in grade in response to the natural topography, and the building scale, because it does step down, it should blend in with the hillside. Based on staff's assertion that everything has been reviewed and is complete, I can make the grading findings because required BMPs and a stormwater management plan will be in place as part of this project during construction. There is no substantial loss of southern oak woodland habitat that's being proposed.
And that would be all the required findings, unless you have anything else to add.
No, that's, we would just be directing the applicant to return to full board with final drawings and details. Unless anybody else has anything they'd like to amend, that would be my motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I wanted to add instead of amend. I think just the point.
Pardon my interruption. If we could get a second on the motion first, if that's possible, and then you can make amendments, just procedurally.
Okay, yes, I will second.
Okay, and you have an addition or an amendment? Ms. Anderson?
Well, it's not, it's just, you know, the details of that, the height is less than 30 feet, we're plus or minus 6 foot. This is onto the scale and the massing and the volume point. We're less than 30 feet. We're 6 foot higher roughly than the existing garage with the new. So points on, you know, fitting scale and massing in the neighborhood appropriate with the neighborhood. Adding on to Leslie's comments there. Also, the neighborhood and fitting it in with the neighbors' comments. I think if you can continue to have that dialogue, and if, you know, you can reduce windows, bring sill heights up potentially. You've done a lot of work already, but I know that two adjacent neighbors still have concerns. So if you could continue to work with them on their issues to get to a resolution, that would be wonderful. And I think the natural appearance and colors of the materials blend in the hillside that you've got. I could go on and on.
Okay.
So perhaps we could just add to the motion then. I'm just going to paraphrase your words, Ms. Anderson. So during the neighborhood preservation findings portion of the motion, as justification for the bulk and scale, if we could just add verbiage that the substantially redeveloped residence is anticipated to be no more than approximately 6 feet taller than the existing residence. And that we would encourage the applicant to continue to have an open and productive dialogue with neighbors. Is that acceptable to the seconder?
Sure, yes.
One clarifying question, Chair Kloss, one of your first points was around lowering one of the plate heights. Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, if you look at the sections, or if you look at sheet A203, the second elevation, the floor-to-floor height of the second floor is currently shown at 11 foot 8 and 1/8 inches. And we are requesting the applicant to reduce that by 1 foot.
Thanks.
And is the, I have two questions to the maker of the motion. You had mentioned to diffuse glazing at select elevations. Can you clarify what that would, with wood slats? Can you confirm what you meant by that?
It was, I think I provided an option for that to either be like a ground or a diffused glass or with wood slats. So I'm most concerned about on sheet A203, if you look at the west elevation, there's a large portion of glazing in the stairwell. And I'm concerned about how that relates to the westerly neighbor. So in any areas where there's large expanses of glazing directly facing one of the neighbors, the intent is to strongly encourage the applicant to use a ground glass or a diffused glass or some sort of privacy screening.
And to the applicant, is it encourage or shall use?
I think at that particular location, I think it's a shall. And alternate locations would be at their discretion.
So for the seconder, can you just clarify that you accept that clarification? Do you have questions about it, or I just want to be clear?
I can accept the condition of approval that Leslie is suggesting, or no, requiring, basically.
For the one window in the stairwell. Okay.
Yeah, it's the large glazing in the entry stair. I believe it's 210.
Thank you. And when staff is ready, I would like for them to repeat the motion before we approve.
And before we go through that, I do think that I just want to acknowledge that we always go back and review these recordings, and so we will get the word for word. So if there's specific clarification, we can always ask the motion maker and seconder. So we will do our best to be as comprehensive, but we will come back to you, and you always approve these minutes.
Here's my best shot at recapping this. The majority of glazing is south facing. In any areas where glazing is directly facing a neighbor, the recommendation is to use a ground glass or privacy screening. And then specifically in this area with the glazing at the entry stair should be a shall, but that doesn't necessarily need to be used in other glazing locations.
Okay, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that sounds right. Would the board like to hear the entire motion repeated again?
No.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
I think we can review it carefully when minutes come out.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Chair Claus,
Yes.
Vice Chair Akelian,
No.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Garfietti.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Vice Chair, can you please announce the appeal period?
Pardon my interruption before everybody. So first of all, for the motion, Vice Chair Arkelian, if you could please state for the record why you weren't able to vote in the positive for this motion, and then I have one other statement afterwards.
Thank you. Believe the project is not ready for project design approval at this time.
Is there anything else specific, like in relation, like what specifically?
The heights, more stepping needs to be done on the hillside despite the limitations expressed by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And if you could announce the 10-day appeal period?
Thank you. And there will be a 10-day appeal period after today.
Yes, and we have instructions here on the screen, but you can always follow up with staff if there are any questions about the appeal process. And I do just want to make one more quick announcement before you close the meeting, Mr. Vice Chair, and just to be respectful for everybody's time. And generally, once this project ends, we don't encourage you to have conversations about the project as you leave. So just advisory to the board members.
Thank you. And today's Single Family Design Board meeting has been adjourned for today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.